following is a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Today marks the one-year anniversary when Russia has invaded Ukraine. What has happened so far? What has the current death toll been? And what is the future of both countries between Russia and Ukraine? Once again, Marjorie Traitor Greene shows the U.S. her brilliance by insisting that there should be a national divorce in this country. Where is she getting this from, and why is she saying it? The train wreck in East Palestine, Ohio, continues to be the center of partisan politics. The right claims the Biden administration has been slow to react, and the Biden administration insists that the Trump administration roll back regulations to mitigate disasters like this. Who is more correct, and who is fully to blame for this catastrophe? Finally, the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter, is in hospice care to live out his final days in his house in Plains, Georgia. Let's talk about his legacy as president, and what has he done since he was president, and how will history remember Jimmy Carter? All this on this week's episode of Current Events on Tap. And good evening, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Current Events on Tap with your host, Alex Kirsch, a podcast from the Alex Kirsch Project. That's me, the Army retiree, the truck driver, the pragmatic progressive, and political commentator. If this is your first time listening, please do me a solid, hit that like and share button, and subscribe to my Spreaker, my YouTube, and to my Spotify, and let alone also my iHeartRadio. This podcast gives you this week's current events, and I like to do what I also call
the Beer of the Week.
The Beer of the Week is where I pick one beer and I review it based upon price and presentation, pour, aroma, taste, and then I give it an overall rating. Be sure to catch me every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Spreaker, and catch me at your earliest convenience on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Just type in the Alex Kirsch Project, and then you'll find this podcast. Be advised, there will be some coarse language on this podcast, and I do apologize in advance, but I am a veteran and a truck driver. It's practically a part of my vocabulary. I know I'm starting about a half an hour late, and I do apologize for that, but you know what? Life happens sometimes. I hope everyone has been enjoying and been staying safe, because we just got hit with a serious winter blast. Holy crap. I mean, honestly, from what I understand, it's still somewhat warmer than usual for Michigan weather. But the fact of the matter is we still had like a power outage when I came home. My wife had been out of power for about 14 hours until the power finally came back on. But, I know that DTE has been working diligently to ensure that people get their power back. But apparently there's still sections around the state and people across the country that are getting hit pretty hard and are without power still to this day. So hopefully people get power back soon, because you know what? Winter can be absolutely brutal. So hopefully everyone is staying safe out there. I'm glad that I'm not out there driving on the roads. I will be going back to work always on Sundays. Sorry I didn't do a show last week, but things have been so crazy around the house. I just didn't have time to do anything as far as doing a show. So I decided just to opt to do a show this week. I'll try not to make a habit out of it. I try to do a show at least once a week. But one of the things I want to talk about last week is how about that Super Bowl. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but oh my God. Patrick Mahomes got his second Super Bowl ring. And I tell you what, that guy, as long as he stays healthy, is going to have a very prosperous career. That dude is the future GOAT after Tom Brady. I'm still going to say Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback to have ever played, but Patrick Mahomes is right there behind him. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy freaking shredded that Philadelphia Eagles defense in the second half on a bum leg of all things. I mean, I saw the highlight, that dude running on a bum leg. Holy crap. Just absolutely insane. But once again, good for the Kansas City Chiefs. I know that my buddy Big Sarge is really happy about that, along with all the other people that are Kansas City Chiefs as well. But yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. It's been a crazy week, especially this week. I mean, I had to deal with the weather considerations and whatnot. I think the earliest delivery I had made since I've worked for this company was a delivery at 3 in the morning. Because I had to pick up a truck for another driver because his truck got into services. But, not services, but there was like a truck breakdown. But it is what it is. I mean, technology, it's not perfect. But I got to say, I mean, I'm still enjoying what I'm doing, though. And I'm almost approaching a year with this company, and I can't wait it. And also, I'm going to be turning 40 on Tuesday. That's right. I am going to be hitting the hill, let's call it that way. I'll be 40 years old, and holy crap, what a life has it been. I mean, I tell you what, I don't care what anybody says. 2021 is still going to be my biggest year yet. It's still my best year to this date because I tell you what, I took a CDL class, I got my CDL, then I also got, I got my associate's degree from the University of Maryland Global Campus. I retired from the Army. We sold our house in Oklahoma. We bought a house in Michigan. I mean, it was a great year, and I started a new career in truck driving. I tell you, 2021 was a huge, stellar year for me. And, I did all this before the age of 40. I mean, there are some people that cannot accomplish that in a lifetime. And I'm not trying to brag, but I'm simply saying that was a great year for me. And I just am so looking forward to what these next 40 years has to offer me, essentially. And I plan on living it out to the best of my abilities. Because you know what? I look at it this way. Every day you live 24 hours a day. And how are you going to live those next 24 hours? Those are the questions you've got to ask yourself. How are you going to live those next 24 hours? I mean, there's no other way to look at it. But I tell you what, though, there is so much to talk about, but I've only narrowed it down to 4 topics because, you know what, as much as I could love to talk about other topics, these are the 4 that I feel like the ones that should really be talking about. I don't have any audio clips tonight, so I'm pretty much just going to be talking to you, so you're going to have to get used to hearing this voice for the next 45 or about 55 minutes or so. So anyway, without further ado, it is time to talk about
The Beer of the Week.
Today's beer of the week is the Farmhouse Ale based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the name of the brewery is the Brewery Vivint. So let's talk about the history. The Brewery Vivint is located in Grand Rapids, Michigan in the East Hills neighborhood, which is in fact, it is built on a manufacturing production brewery. It is fully functioning. It is built inside of an 80-plus-year-old renovated building, which at one point was a funeral home in the city of Grand Rapids from 1894 to 1980, and it was operated by the Metcalf family. Where the chapel building is now is where the pub of the brewery is now located. Now, their website lists the crossroads of 3 passions for their brewery. 1. Our love of the tradition and artistic approach of European beer styles with some emphasis on Belgian and French styles. 2. Devotion to using local sources for ingredients and running our business according to the 3 pillars: sustainability, environmental integrity, social equity, and economic viability. And 3, sharing the experience of how beer and food can be paired to uplift the enjoyment of both, which I really love. I think it's so cool. Their beer inspiration when the owners made a trip to the French-speaking Belgian countryside in a place called Wallonia. They also used the region as inspiration to their beer logo. Vivant, according to the website, means to be alive or to be lively. Their goal is to brew all different kinds of beers that are of European style, essentially. They have flavors like the Farmhand, which is the beer I'm talking about tonight, the Farmhouse Ale, their Farmhand Tart Tangerine, Grand Lager, Rapid IPA, Ski Patrol, Tea Patrol, Beach Patrol, and their fruit series, Straw Barb, Raz Peach, Jam Jar, and Sangria. 2 words, not 1. And on their cans, they have the slogan from our... Oh, sorry, that's not correct. That's from the last one. I don't know why it's still there. All right. It has alcohol percentage of 5.5%, and the type of beer it is Saison, I think it is, how it's pronounced, which uses a wild top fermenting yeast and local ingredients from the general area. Now, I'm going to rate this with my rating system of mugs, 1 mug being the lowest and 5 mugs being the highest. So first, price and presentation. I'm going to go with a 3 mugs out of 5 mugs. I bought this 6-pack at the VG's grocery store in Carroll, Michigan for about $11.99 roughly, I think. Now, if you want to, you can also buy it online, or you can, if you have a chance, you can go to the brewery itself in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But it's pretty much going to be available in most liquor stores in Michigan. I don't know where it's located across the 50 states, but you can always look it up online. You can possibly order it. Now, the can itself is a bright red and a dark red color, with a large rooster on the back and a smaller rooster on the front of it, and the large white lettering of Farmhand, and then at the very, very bottom on the front part of the can, you have the Farmhouse Ale, but on the back, you just have the giant rooster and the lettering of Farmhand. It's just pretty basic. It doesn't really say anything really flashy, honestly. But one thing that's really cool is on the side of the lettering, you'll see yellow lettering, our flagship beer suitable for any occasion. Brewed in the tradition of Wallonian Saison ales, made with passion in Beer City, Michigan. So, obviously, they say Grand Rapids, Michigan is Beer City, Michigan. I don't know if that's what the real name of it is called, but doesn't really matter, honestly. But again, it's a 3 mugs out of 5 mugs. It's very standard, nothing really flashy about it. But you know what? Sometimes less is more. But still, 3 out of 5. The pour, I'm gonna give this also a 3 mugs out of 5 mugs. It's about average. I mean, you got that little small presence of foamy head, but it dissipates after a short while. It does leave a very nice film at the very, very top of it. Like I'm looking down at it right now. There's still like a little bit of a film left over. But it has a very, very nice light gold color to it, though. The aroma. Let's take a sniff real quick. You can really smell the hops and the malts in it, but others have said that they detected the citrus or apricot smell, but I'm not picking it up. But it smells kind of average beer to me. It's not horrible. It's not one that really jumps out at me either. So once again, another 3 out of 5 mugs. The taste. Now, this is interesting. The taste, I'm giving a 5 out of 5. Why? I love the taste of it. When you taste it, you really pick up the citrus and / apricot taste in it. I mean, you really taste the malt in there, the citrus taste in there. It's very pleasant to taste ones. Because here's the thing I like about this ale. When you taste it, not only do you get a good initial taste, but you also get a very good aftertaste to boost. Now, I love a beer / ale or whatever you want to call it that has a very nice aftertaste, and this one definitely does. It tastes so much better than it actually smells, honestly. Like when it first hits my taste buds, it's really pleasant. It's a very smooth taste to it. It's got that slight bite to it, but not a powerful bite, which I love about it. And I really want to go to the brewery someday and try this beer on tap. I bet you it would taste so much better on tap there. As much as I really wanted to break out my physics tap, you know, I just had so much to do today. I didn't have a chance to do so. But I tell you what, I bet you this tastes absolutely gorgeous. Just tastes beautifully fresh out of a tap. So 5 out of 5. Overall, I'm going to give it 4 mugs out of 5 mugs. Now, even though the rest of the ratings were average at like 3 mugs out of 5, I love the story behind this brewery, and I truly believe that the taste is what elevated it to be 4 mugs out of 5 mugs, honestly. I definitely do recommend this one, and honestly, it was my mother-in-law, Cheryl, that told me about this beer, and it is just tastes so good. Like, I tried it at her house, and I was like, this is really good. Like, I like how just, it seems like a normal beer, but when you taste it, it tastes better than average beers, honestly. I recommend it, and I plan on trying more beers from this brewery to see what else they have to offer. And again, the backstory and the taste of this beer is truly a good one. I'm going to give massive props and cheers to the brewery Vivrant. Now, on to current events. Let's rewind the clocks about a year back. A year ago, I was working with a different trucking company. I was working on a team company. I was working with Covenant. And I was working with my co-driver at the time, Kamal. And I was driving across the country. I think it was Kamal. I think it was with Kamal. But anyway, I had just taken part in a panel on Discord a couple of days before the invasion took place. And the discussion was whether Russia was going to invade Ukraine or not. And having recently talked to my friend, Michael Hilliard, who is my geopolitics go-to, and I tell you, he is the geopolitics go-to because this guy is like the cream of the crop when it comes down to geopolitical stuff. He and I were both convinced that Russia had no real incentive to invade. I mean, why the hell would they? What's the point of invading Ukraine? What are they going to gain from this? And that this was nothing more than saber rattling. And I firmly believed in this, and so did he. And on this panel, I said I would be very surprised if Russia actually invaded. Then when I woke up to I think get a drink of water, I saw that I had a dozen or so notifications that Russia had in fact invaded. I was blown away. And I sent a message to Michael Ryan. I was like, dude, what the fuck? And he's like, right, I am gobsmacked, he said. Like, that is the term that he used, gobsmacked. Like, nobody predicted that this would happen. Now, why did Russia invade? That's the first question we should be asking. Well, according to Russian President Vladimir Putin, he insisted that NATO was the aggressor and that the West was an existential threat to Russia. Now, the right wing has continued to insist that Biden allowed this to happen, and if that Trump was president, Putin never would have invaded Ukraine. Well, I don't think anybody can actually accurately predict this. If you think that Putin was scared of Trump, you're living in an alternate reality. Putin was not scared of Trump. Putin is not scared of people like Trump. Trump thinks that he's this great deal breaker, that he can intimidate anybody, but honestly, he is not an intimidator whatsoever. Putin is a professional spy. You think he's going to be scared of somebody like Donald Trump? Absolutely not. Now, Trump, for starters, also loves him some Vladimir Putin. Anyone who says otherwise is just kidding themselves. I mean, come on. Trump even listened to Putin over his own intelligence agencies when he said that Russia spread a lot of disinformation that affected the outcome of the 2016 election. And he says, well, I spoke to Putin. He said I wasn't doing it. And guess what? I believe him. Which is completely absurd. But anyway, I'm sure that Putin would have invaded regardless of who was in office as of right now. And the answer as to why Putin invaded in 2022, well, as of right now, we still don't have a firm opinion on it, or I have an opinion about it, but we don't have any real confirmation of the matter, okay? Ever since he annexed Crimea in 2014, to where I initially believed that the people of Crimea wanted to be annexed because they felt the Ukrainian government has become more oppressive to their way of life, I found that out to be absolute BS. Because the majority of the people who took part in the Crimea referendum of 2014 to have a Russian government in place were given a false choice. Either join a Russian as a federal subject, or restore the 1992 Crimean Constitution, and were only given 10 days to vote. Now, since Putin was able to annex Crimea without any real repercussions, he figured under Biden it was going to be no different. Reason number 2. He needed to cement his legacy in Russian history by bringing the USSR back together, starting with Ukraine. His timing indicated that he was ready to go forth. And reason number 3. He wanted to draw the U.S. back into another war and see if NATO would send troops initiating World War III. Seeing as how we are only supporting, both with the aid of both NATO and the rest of the U.S., both financially and with military hardware, and Russia is still losing ground, shows that Putin was not prepared for this united front against him. And he was not ready for the resolve of the Ukrainian people. So I wonder if he was just a betting man and just realized, oh shit, these guys are for real. Like, they are not getting that much involved. I mean, we are getting involved as far as like sending aid and sending military equipment, but we're not sending any troops over there. The people that are from this country, that from the United States, that are fighting over there are doing of their own accord. Not representing the United States, just doing it of their own accord because they feel that they've got to fight back against an oppressive force like Russia. Now, make no mistake about it. I'm not saying Ukraine is innocent of anything. I know Ukraine has some shady people as well. But here's the thing. Who would I much rather have on my side, Ukraine or Russia? I'm going to go with Ukraine. Because Russia has a very big track record of human rights violations. Now, before anybody says, well, wait a second, what about this? What about that? Yes, I get it. There is no such thing as a country that is innocent of human rights violations, but I'm simply saying that Russia has a track record of human rights violations, especially against those that are members of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some countries out here that we are friends with that have worse track records in regards to that. However, that's neither here nor there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Now, since this war has kicked off, the U.S. sent nearly $75 billion to support Ukraine. Now, let's go for quick context. Foreign aid has always been described to me as an insurance policy with countries to stay in good faith with the U.S. Now, I'll give an example. Let's say, for example, if we gave millions of dollars to Malaysia. Malaysia needs money from us to help keep their economy rolling, right? And let's say, for example, if we continue to support Malaysia, but then one day we're like, you know what, we're just going to stop giving you money, and we cut them off completely financially. And then when they try to reach out to other countries, like let's say, for example, Australia or Japan, and they don't get help out, guess what Malaysia might do? They might reach out to China next. Hey, China, do you think you can give some money? What's China going to do? Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll give you some money, but you need to give something to us in return. And guess what China is going to be looking for? Real estate. Strategic, tactical value, something that can help them in the possible eventuality of them fighting against us. That's exactly what China was going to be thinking about, and I'm a firm believer in this. Now, I'm not saying that this is what we're using Malaysia for, but I'm saying I can see why we want to keep sending foreign aid, because it's more of an insurance policy to ensure that our adversaries don't get involved in those areas. Now, again, this is speculation, but this is why foreign aid is in fact important. We actually end up seeing a return on our investments with foreign aid too. Now, I'm not going to go into that. It's a very, very complicated subject, honestly. Now, with the research that I have done in 2021 alone, the U.S. had budgeted $38 billion in foreign aid spending, and 25% of that went to the following countries. Ethiopia received $1.13 billion. Jordan, 1.03 billion. Afghanistan, 860 million. South Sudan, 821 million. Congo, 814 million. Yemen, 814 million. Nigeria, 803 million. Syria, 774 million. Sudan, 488 million. And Somalia, $475 million. Now, that's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. Now, is $75 billion a lot to give a country like Ukraine? Of course it is. I'm not saying it isn't. Is it necessary? Again, absolutely. Now, to the people asking, well, what about our homeless and our homeless veterans? Okay, well, for starters, we have always had this issue with homelessness in our country, especially with homeless veterans. And since I've been alive, which is, again, almost 40 years comes this Tuesday, we have always had homeless problem and homeless veterans. So pretending like the money that we are spending in Ukraine is now a problem because now you're suddenly worried about money being spent is an absolute crock of shit. Let's just be honest here. We have always had a problem with veterans and homeless veterans, whatnot, the veterans getting care that they need. This has always been a problem. And pretending to suddenly give a shit because we're sending money to Ukraine, a country you may not like, to me it just sounds like a virtue signal, honestly. Yeah, of course, I want our homeless to be taken care of. But the thing is that there's legislation being passed out all across the states where actually they don't fund resources and try to do things to help the homeless because, there's an episode on Last Week Tonight I watched with John Oliver where they talked about homelessness. And there's a woman that had been homeless for years and years. And guess what? Like years later, she was still homeless. And she's been going to the same exact homeless shelter in New York City. Homelessness has always been a problem in this country. And suddenly pretending like, oh, well, we need to take care of our people back home. We haven't been taking care of our own people for decades. Centuries even, if you really want to get absolutely real. So the fact that you're worried about money going to Ukraine because you are worried about the people back here, when have we ever cared about our people here? I fully support us supporting Ukraine because Ukraine was invaded by an outside force. Russia was trying to take over Ukraine, and we have got to do our part to support it because if we don't support Ukraine, Russia is going to just keep going, I think. Even though I'm pretty sure if they try to invade Ethiopia, then we would really have to respond because they are covered under Article 5. And for those not aware, under Article 5, they are an ally, and if we did not help them out whatsoever, then guess what? That's a huge slap in the face to them especially because, not Ethiopia, but Estonia and Moldova, countries like that. Because they actually supported us when they came to Iraq, or when they came to Iraq to support us. There's a lot of countries that, especially that were former into the USSR, that supported us in Iraq and Afghanistan. So for us to turn our back against them would be a huge, huge slap in the face. Anyway, continuing on. Since the war started, Russia has started out strong, but they've been getting skull-drug since then. For starters, they have the entire West pretty much against them. Sweden and Finland are now wanting to be a part of NATO because of Russian aggression. Russia has lost over 60,000 soldiers. 60,000. Now, there's those out there that think, oh, that's just a whole highly over-exaggerated number. But these are the numbers that they have so far. It could be an over-exaggeration, but still, 60,000 soldiers in this battle alone. That is a colossal number. And 300,000 soldiers in the Russian army were called to duty in September in a partial mobilization. That's an insane number, honestly. Very insane number. And according to the United Nations, 8,000 civilians, including hundreds of children, have been killed in Ukraine. Now, things for Russia have gotten so bad that people are being conscripted to fight. People that don't even want to fight. We're talking about people that are forced. It's sort of like a draft, essentially. Being forced to fight in a conflict they don't even believe in. I remember seeing a video about this. There's an entire formation of guys that have been conscripted that are being sent into Ukraine. They are literally saying, we don't want to fight, but you're going to get us killed. And all these Russian priests are basically just saying, oh, you're going to go in service of your country. You're going to die honorably. It's like, we don't want to die. We don't want to frickin' leave. What's wrong with you? But still, they've been conscripted and sent into a fight in a war they don't believe in. Now, I have personally seen how this can go very badly, especially for Russia. Now, it's not so much the Russian government I feel bad for, but the Russian people that are being forced into this. Now, in 2003, the first coalition forces that the U.S. forces trained with the ICDC, the Iraq Civilian Defense Corps. They were trained at a place called Dogwood for 2 weeks and were expected to coach, and we were expected to coach and mentor them afterwards. Let's just say it went really, really badly. Now, Dogwood, I can't remember exactly where, but it was located in the country of Iraq, out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And they were trained for about 14 days and then sent out into the fight. 14 days, essentially. Now, 14 days is not enough time for you to build a competent fighting force, especially if you're going to send them out there and expect them to be ready to take the fight against the insurgent forces. It's not. It's not nearly enough time. And now, I had seen what happens when you rush a process like this. Now, it's not that some of these guys were not bad people. It's just that they were very ill prepared to go forward with the training that they had received. For starters, there was one night when my platoon and myself were guarding the Patriarch Unit of Kurdistan and downtown Baghdad. I can't remember exactly where, but it was not too far away from, I think, the Tigris River. Well, anyway, we were sitting there on guard. It's in the middle of the night, and next thing we know, we heard rampant, just nonstop AK-47 fire. Come to find out that the ICDC just opened up on somebody that was shooting a laser pointer at them. That's all it was, because they thought that it was a sniper, and then they went ballistic. Like, every ICDC soldier just opened up their AK-47s and emptied all of their magazines. We thought that the war was back on. Not that the war wasn't on, but we thought that it was a major battle that had taken place, but it wasn't. It was all over a misunderstanding. But that's where training really comes into play. Because we did not emphasize enough to make sure that these guys were well trained. Because some of these guys, I believe, had military experience. But there was one thing they didn't have. They didn't have the discipline to actually know what was a threat and what was not. Here's another example. We were training these guys on how to search vehicles and whatnot, right? And I was walking away from one ICDC soldier, and next thing I know, I hear pop, 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 pop. The dude had his finger on the trigger, and the round squeezed off right behind me. And of course, the rounds landed behind me, but they probably ricocheted elsewhere. But my reaction time was so slow, I danced away from that shortly afterwards. But the guy legitimately felt bad. I mean, he just screwed up. It's that things go. But again, it's little basic mistakes like that just goes to show that this was a problem. Now, imagine grabbing people. Now, these guys volunteered. Don't get me wrong. They volunteered for this ICDC stuff. Now, imagine grabbing a bunch of people, training them for a week or two, and then expect them to go fight against people that are pissed off that you are invading their country. Think about that for a second. This is exactly why this is a problem, especially for Russia. Because you're sending people that don't want to fight into another country. Now, I don't blame the people for being pissed off at their government. I honestly get it. But again, I'm digressing away. But I'm just kind of giving a little bit of context as to why it's bad to conscript people. And hopefully this comes back to bite the Russian government in the ass. But the people that are going to pay for it are the people that are going to die in service or the forced service of their country. Anyway, I keep digressing. Now, I'm just going to give some examples of the kind of equipment they've lost. Of the 1,770 tanks lost in country, 1,042 have been destroyed, 86 have been damaged, 95 have been abandoned, and 547 have been captured. Of the 793 other armored vehicles lost in country, 492 have been destroyed, 13 have been damaged, 28 have been abandoned, and 260 have been captured. Now, I could talk about this all day, all the stuff that they have lost, all the equipment they've lost. Now, a lot of it has to do with the equipment that we use that we're going to fight in the Cold War to fight against the Russians. There's also been drones that have been used to blow them up. I mean, the Ukrainians have been just fighting tooth and nail against them, and they've been doing quite well, honestly. But let's just be honest. Things are not looking good for Russia. Putin is continuing to lose face with the rest of the world. Russia has crippling sanctions against it, which is hurting their economy. And Ukraine is continuing to take back land that was lost to Russia. And even Biden made an appearance in Ukraine, which is a statement all on its own. Now, I don't care what anybody says. The fact that he went there, and I'm sure, yes, he had an entire detail of Ukrainian troops surrounding him. But the fact that he actually showed up in the middle of a war zone with President Zelensky is a message of itself. And, he gave a speech about it, but I'm not going to play the speech because I don't have it available. Now, China is wanting for there to be peace between the two countries. But honestly, the only two people that should be talking about negotiations is Russia and Ukraine. Now, Ukraine should be the one to decide and should be the ones to set the terms. They should be the ones to tell Russia, this is what's going to happen, and you are going to agree to them. Even if this means that taking back Crimea from the Russian government, this is really pivotal. It's Zelensky that should set the terms, not Putin. If Zelensky gives Russia any leeway whatsoever, he's probably going to lose face with his people, honestly. Zelensky staying in his country is actually a victory in and of itself. After we saw what happened in Afghanistan, after the president of Afghanistan bailed on his people, which pretty much caused his Afghan military to just say, screw it, why should I fight if he's not going to stay with us? Zelensky staying showed that he is willing to fight it out with his people, even under death threats from the Russian government. But giving any kind of concessions to Russia would definitely damage Zelensky's credibility. He should be the one setting the terms, and Putin needs to accept them. The Russian people do not need this war anymore, and the Ukrainian people have no right to give anything else up. We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this. From the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies, we are done. Marjorie Traitor Greene. Congresswoman Marjorie Traitor Greene. I guess one divorce isn't enough for her. She has to go and want another divorce, this time with the entire country. Is she out of her frickin' mind? The answer is yes, she is. She is unfit to be in any office whatsoever. It is completely out of... I cannot even believe this. It's bad enough that once again, I've played audio 3 times of her saying, if I was in charge of January 6th, we would have won and we would have been armed. And she's still in Congress to this day. Why? Why is she still in Congress? Why did people vote her back in? What exactly has she brought to this country that's beneficial? And I know the whataboutisms are just going to come flying out. Well, what about AOC? What about Rashida Tlaib? What about Ilhan Omar? Okay, you know what? You can have any criticisms you want, and I'll listen to them. But I am talking about Marjorie Traitor Greene, and I'm going to keep calling her Marjorie Traitor Greene. Why? Because I think she is a traitor. She goes against everything that this country stands for. And the fact that she wants a national divorce goes against everything that, myself and so many other people have fought for. And here's the funny part. If she wanted a national divorce across the country, her own state would kick her out. Why? Because it's a blue state. The majority of people in Georgia voted for Biden. It's a blue state predominantly. Like we have, senators in the state of Georgia that are Democrats. I mean, what exactly is she hoping to achieve by this? And to insist that she hears from other people, I would love to know the names of these people that think this. Anybody that says this, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you are an absolute idiot. I'm sorry. I don't believe in a national divorce. I don't believe in this crap. The last time we had a divorce of this nature was around the time of the Civil War, and that did not go well for the conservative base last time. The ones that wanted to keep the slaves, the ones that called themselves the Confederacy. They lost the war. Now the fact that you've got another conservative, Marjorie Traitor Greene, wanting a national divorce because she's worried about some woke agenda. What woke agenda is she talking about? What woke culture issues are you exactly talking about? What? You're going to talk about the LGBTQ plus community? Why are you so worried about something you do not understand? You're worried about what? That children, might be wondering about their sexuality or something like that? You need to understand something. It's not the LGBTQ plus community that you got to worry about grooming your children. It's like these religious nut jobs, because the majority of people that commit the mass sexual assault that runs on are people in churches, honestly. Now, I'm not saying that there are not members of the LGBTQ plus community that commit this, but I'm simply saying the overwhelming numbers of people that do this are heterosexual people that do these sexual assaults. but yet you're focused on this woke culture stuff. What else are you worried about? Oh, you're worried about, like, people that are protesting against police brutality. Is that what you're worried about next? Is that the woke culture stuff you're talking about? Are you worried about the fact that there's a black mermaid in The Little Mermaid? Is that what you're worried about, Marge? Is this exactly what you call woke culture issues? You're not even making any sense. You're just spitting out a bunch of bullet points to get your followers to believe that it is the end times, therefore we need to have a national divorce. She needs to get thrown the fuck out of office. It is that simple. She is an absolute nightmare. I cannot believe that a person of Congress would still be advocating for this and still keep her position. She needs to get thrown the hell out of office. I mean, it's amazing enough that she was able to win her election by a landslide. I mean, I would love to have seen Marcus Flowers win, but the more I saw it, because when I watched that debate, I thought that was one of the worst debates I'd ever seen because it was only a half an hour long. The moderators let Marge talk the majority of the time. She was allowed to cut off Marcus Flowers. I mean, what in the absolute hell? But she offers nothing to this country. She supported the January 6th insurrectionists. She was even part of CPAC where Brandon Straka, whatever the hell his name was, dressed up like a January 6th insurrectionist. She led a prayer talking about how I'm going to pray for these people and stuff like that. She sides with insurrectionists. She's angry. She got big mad because Twitter suspended her civilian account but maintained her congressional account, and she decided to throw a little temper tantrum. She is an absolutely useless individual. But for some reason, the conservative base likes her. Why? She goes against everything that you stand for. She's known to harass people, even as a private citizen, and apparently she's known to harass people as a congressperson. But she still has a job. Why? Why the hell did you all vote for this person? That's what I want to ask her district. What makes her so appealing? She hasn't done any bit of legislation that actually benefits this country. If she can, I would be surprised to read some of it. But the fact that she's asking for a national divorce is absolutely ludicrous. Nobody should be asking for a national divorce. I didn't ask for a national divorce when Trump was president of the United States. I just talked about how much of an absolute shitbag he was under my breath, while not in uniform, because he was. The man was an absolute joke. But honestly, I think she's doing this is because she wants to win Trump's favor. I think she's really gunning for that VP position should he win the nomination for the GOP, which it's, as of right now, because of a little stunt he pulled in Ohio, it's looking pretty likely that he's probably going to win the nomination. I hope he doesn't. I mean, not that I'm saying that I like Ron DeSantis anymore, but we cannot afford another term of President Trump. We cannot afford it at this point. We're already paying for it enough as is. But I think she's really wanting that running mate position. That's all she's looking for. She is hungry for power. She's an evil, vile, vindictive woman, and I cannot believe that I am saying this about a congresswoman. But it's true. She's probably one of the most useless people out there. I mean, I could just rant and rave talk about how much I just cannot stand her. But the thing is, I consider her an absolute threat to our country. I certainly do. I think Marjorie Traitor Greene is a threat to this country. And I could say that until I'm blue in the face, but I'll just leave it at that. So it's been determined by Norfolk Southern, the rail company, that an overheated wheel bearing led to the Ohio train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. A wheel bearing of the train's 23rd car caused 4,600 cubic yards of contaminated soil and 1.7 million gallons of polluted water. Thousands of different wildlife are dead because of this. The people of East Palestine are pissed, and they damn well have every right to be. But this just goes to show that regulation from the government are 100% justified at times. And anyone out here who thinks that the government implementing and wanting regulations is oppressive needs to review about what happened here. Now, under the Trump administration, they took out regulations that would ensure tankers that were carrying hazardous material had the necessary equipment to prevent derailments such as this. I mean, they even made a huge ceremony of cutting these regulations. I mean, I'm not making this up. This is exactly how things are. Now, I'm not saying that this safety equipment is the answer and the end-all be-all, but it's to help mitigate to ensure that disasters like this don't take place. Now, the Biden administration since day one has told the state of Ohio and the Governor DeWine, whatever you need, we are there. But for some reason, that just isn't enough. Now, the conservative base is losing their shit, complaining about how Biden hasn't done enough. The governor of Ohio, Governor DeWine, stated that since day one, Biden says, hey, listen, I got your back. I'll help you with anything out. And DeWine told Biden, your EPA has been down here and they've been putting work to fix this problem, essentially. That's just not verbatim, but that's just what he told him, essentially. Of course, then Secretary Buttigieg, the Transportation Secretary, I'm sorry, I just get jumbled sometimes. He's been catching a lot of flack recently for not being down there soon enough. Now, let me ask you a question. When Elaine Chao, or any of that matter, any other Secretary of Transportation, have they ever shown up after a train wreck like this? I mean, I tried looking it up and I didn't see any other occasion. But yeah, for some reason, now Pete Buttigieg should have shown up the day after it happened, but yet he didn't. Now he's getting lambasted for taking his sweet time doing it. Now, had he shown up, would the conservative base been okay with it? I seriously doubt it. I don't think they would have been okay with it. They would have been like, oh, look, this is a photo op. Pete Buttigieg doesn't care. He's just covering his ass. Now, again, this is another lose-lose situation for the Biden administration. But, of course, then you got idiots on the right crying about Biden going to Ukraine instead of East Palestine, Ohio. But, of course, then you got the MAGA birds celebrating in force when Trump went to East Palestine, where he did a campaign rally by handing out hats and Big Macs and expired bottles of water, acting like he really gives a shit. But let's be honest, he doesn't give a shit. This was a photo op. Him showing up was a photo op. Trump did this to pretend like he gives a damn about the people. He doesn't care. I mean, the people that turned out to receive gifts, it's because they already had their mind made up of Trump. They already love Trump from the get-go, probably. Not that he cares about them. They believe it. But this was truly the example of a photo op. Now, if Biden were to show up, would these same people show the same love for Biden? Pfft, definitely not. They would tell him that this is his fault, how the infrastructure bill didn't actually do anything, I mean, that's exactly what they would do. How do I know? Because this is how their partisan politics plays into things. But let's be perfectly honest, though. While the government does play some part in making sure that things like this don't happen, let's look at the real culprit about this. Our country sucks in regards to ensuring the safety and the mitigation of train derailments. But according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics and Federal Railroad Administration, our country has on average about 1,705 train derailments per year. Now, before anyone tries to tell me about automobile accidents and collisions on the highway, frickin' spare me. We talk about why it's necessary to pay taxes to fix the roads, but people still get mad about road construction. When it comes down to the movement of freight, it is an essential part of keeping this country's logistics together. I know, because I pick up from rail yards all the time. Now, the people who work these rail yards and railroads are the blood vessel of this country. Without them, freight doesn't get hauled. Now, the workers are not the ones that are making the decision on here. It's the people at the very, very top of the food chain making the decisions to not put these safety features in place. Now, are they perfect? Of course not. However, it's not so much the fact that technology breaks. We all know this. The issue is the lack of effort to put these safety measures in place. The people most responsible for this, in my opinion, are the shot callers at the very top of the food chain at Norfolk Southern. Train derailments are always a problem according to the data that I presented. So this is not necessarily a new issue. The fact so many of these derailments happen, and not specifically with Norfolk Southern. I'm talking about every train company, but I'm talking about this occasion right here. But this is because, due to shortcuts being done for the sake of more profit, goes to show that profit is apparently more important than safety. This has got to change. I am so sick and tired of hearing the excuses about how a company/corporation should be free to make decisions that do in fact have drastic consequences to the product being shipped and to the people and the environment that will be affected by this. It's not a matter of if, but when. This reckless behavior and putting your people in danger only enforces the belief that I have asked. If you don't give a shit about your people's safety, then why the hell should anybody work for you then? Norfolk Southern should absorb the majority of the responsibility here, without a doubt. And I'm talking about the top of the food chain, not the workers. This administration needs to make an example out of their leadership while ensuring their leadership does not punish the workers who put in the difficult hours to make ends meet. Decisions at the top is what has allowed situations like this to take place, and I am sick and tired of the excuses. I used the wrong sound clip there. That is my fault. I don't know why I hit that one on accident. So anyway, for the last topic for tonight, I'm going to talk about Jimmy Carter, the 39th president of the United States, and without a doubt, probably one of the most honest people that this country has ever known. He officially entered hospice care on the 18th of February. He wishes to spend the rest of his days with his family, and he's lived a long life of 98 years old. And he's been married to his wife, Rosalind Carter, since 1946. They've been married for 75 years, which makes them the longest presidential couple in history. That is a long time to be. I mean, there are people that can't last that. I mean, people don't even live that long sometimes. The fact that they've been together that long is absolutely just incredible. Now, I never really knew much about Jimmy Carter all the way up until 2019, but when Claire and I were still living in Georgia, I had heard that he was still giving Sunday school sermons in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. So I talked Claire into going, and that Sunday we woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, left the house around 4, got to Plains, Georgia around 5:30, 6 a.m. We got a number, and we were told that the doors would open up at 8. We got ourselves a quick bite to eat from a gas station that was nearby. I mean, of course, I went to go to the gas station to get something for us to eat. And once we waited in the line, we found out that there was an actual sanctuary which housed about 300 people, and then there was an overflow room. Well, we were going to be in the overflow room, which, it's fine, no big deal. We just weren't expecting too much out of it. Got to take a drink real quick. We talked to a gentleman that was a very, very nice gentleman. He says, I might be a regnant, but I didn't vote for that son of a bitch. Talking about Trump, of course. Well, anyway, we've been told that what happens in the overflow room. So what usually happens is he shows up. He comes to the overflow room first, kind of talk with people, kind of get to know everybody. Excuse me. And once he talks to everybody, he then, answers questions that anybody might have to ask, right? So after he asks some questions of people, he then goes into the overflow room. And what was really cool about this is I found that Jimmy Carter still spoke fluent Spanish. He reads the Bible both in English and Spanish to keep his Spanish skills sharp. And there was a young couple from South America there, and they spoke Spanish to him. And then without missing a beat, he speaks Spanish to them. I mean, it was incredible. There was a person there who says, I'm from Greece, and there's a pastor there that he says he knows you. It's like, oh yeah, Pastor such and how's he doing? Then he just seemed really, attentive and warm and responsive and just witty as all get out. And again, I didn't know anything about him that much. I just knew he was president of the United States, and that's about it. And from what I understand, I mean, most people said that he was one of the worst presidents in the history of the country, which I'm not going to – I definitely say he's not one of the worst ever. I know he probably wasn't the most popular. Probably because, from what I understand, he was just too honest. I mean, if the guy tried to tell a lie, his tongue would snap off practically. Well, anyway, he then goes into the main sanctuary. He does the same thing he usually did, was like ask people questions, stuff like that. Well, he sat down on the chair and he's like, I usually give these sermons behind this pedestal, but I have to sit down this time. And like when he sat down, his head was behind the the pedestal in front of him. And then he pushed a button, and he had this smile on his face and just raised right up. And Claire was like, this man is an absolute delight. And it was such an amazing Sunday school sermon. It was around the time of Easter. And so he talked about like the history of Easter, why we celebrate it, what the significance of it was, the earliest time when Easter, on the day of Easter, which was like it would have been in March, and then like the latest which Easter would be celebrated, which had been late April, what have you. And it was just really interesting listening to talk about it. But one of the things he really brought up I thought was amazing, was the fact that in our history of this country, we've only known 16 years of peace since this country was founded. 16 years of peace as a country. That is insane if you think about it. I mean, we're still in some conflicts across the world. We don't really know peace just yet. But anyway, he says, if we spent as much time doing good upon one another, just think about the impact we might make with the rest of the world. I mean, I could read quote after quote after quote of Jimmy Carter, but I'm not going to do that. So what's really amazing about him was the fact that throughout his church sermon, he challenged the entire congregation to go out and do one good deed for somebody else. Doesn't matter what it is. It's like giving money for gas or giving people a ride, what have you. he truly believed that if everybody did at least one good deed, you're doing your part in making the world a better place. And I have no doubt that he actually believed these things. Now, is Jimmy Carter a perfect man? No, of course not. There is no such thing as a perfect man. And I know probably one of the biggest things that people remember him for was the hostage situation that took place in Iran. Now, I want everybody to, when they have a chance, to go on YouTube and look up when he gives a presidential address on this. In this, he talked about how a decision was made by him to send in military units to go and retrieve these hostages. At the last minute, they had to withdraw. And in the midst of the withdrawal, an accident took place. Service members were killed. Now, here was something that Jimmy Carter did. This was a decision that I made. I made this call. He took the full blunt of the responsibility like any other person does. When you are in charge, be in charge. When things go great, you take full credit. When things go bad, you got to take the blunt of the responsibility, and he did. I mean, it's that level of integrity that I feel is really lacking nowadays. And of course, sometimes decisions that you had to make were because your hands were forced. But he didn't try to pass the buck off to anybody else. He says, this was my decision, and my heart goes out to the grieving families, and I truly did believe that. There are so many things that Jimmy Carter did in his life that we should all just be in complete awe of. I mean, he worked with Habitat for Humanity, which I still contribute money to this day. And I'm not trying to, look for props. I just do it because I believe that it does good things for people in this country. Habitat for Humanity, does its part to build homes for people that need homes, essentially. Even in his 90s, even after he had just suffered cancer, he was still out there hammering, drilling, and working amongst other people. I mean, this guy never stopped working after he left the Oval Office. And just the fact that he never stopped, he just used the values that he was brought up upon and the fact that he believed that doing good right upon people, because that's what Jesus would have done, is the best example of Christianity, honestly. Now, Christians do get a bad rep, but that's because Christians that are bad are the ones that are eating up most spotlight, honestly. And there's a lot of bad Christians out there, and I definitely like to call them out as I see fit. But I'm not going to go into talking about them. I'm talking about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was definitely one of the very few people that I can definitely say was what represents the good parts of America. The good, decent, hard-working parts of America. He never wavered. He never let fear compromise who he was. And I could just talk about all of his accomplishments. And I was going to talk about some of his accomplishments as president. But, I would be here all day because there are so many of them. But I can definitely say that Jimmy Carter as the man is definitely the best part that represents the best parts of America. Now, I get it. Some of his foreign policy decisions, especially in South America, were really terrible. But let's be honest, lots of presidents have made terrible decisions that are foreign policy decisions. I mean, hell, Biden's going to be remembered for the Afghanistan withdrawal. Regardless of who was in office, that was something that was going to come back to bite us no matter what. Jimmy Carter's decision with what happened in South America with overthrowing democratically elected leaders, bad idea. Installing people that we wanted to fund because they were better for our outlook on things, bad idea. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Ronald Reagan wasn't exactly a saint either. Iran-Contra scandal, a horrible thing that took place. But, again, I look at the way on how Jimmy Carter was. He wasn't a bitter, angry man. I mean, I know he's still alive, but it's just looking back on his life. You just look at the things that he'd accomplished. Let alone the fact that he just is a decent man. And the fact that, that Claire and I got to meet him and Rosalind, I mean, it wasn't for very long. It was just like take a picture and then thank you, have a nice day kind of deal, which I will always be appreciative of. So, yep. But the way I look at this, though, is the fact that Jimmy Carter was one of the few people I truly do believe that did so many good things in this country. He did so many wonderful things that made this country such a much better place. And I truly do believe that the values that he instilled and he practiced what he preached are the things that we should definitely take the time to remember him for. Not just remember some of the things. I mean, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that there were some bad decisions that he might have made. But the thing is, he was always honest and front with what he did. Again, if the man told a lie, his tongue would snap off, honestly. And whenever he actually passes on into the next life, yes, it might seem absurd to some people, but yes, I do believe in God, and yes, I do believe there's an afterlife. I have no doubt that he's going to be welcome in the company of God and Jesus Christ because of the example and all the good things that he did in this world. Jimmy Carter is definitely a good example, and I really do want to thank him for all of his great contributions that he's left in this world. The legacy that he's going to leave behind is going to be remembered for generations to come. People will say, oh, his presidency was terrible. Well, guess what? Look at his entire life as a whole. Look at the impact that he left with the rest of the world. That's the things I think we should remember him for. Not just remembering like some of the bad things he did, but remembering all the great things he did and all the great differences he made in this world. Him and his wife, Rosalind Carter. Think about the emotional impact and the emotional great good that he did for everybody in this world. And all I can definitely say is if there's anybody that's deserving to be welcomed into the embrace of our Lord and Savior and with God himself is definitely Jimmy Carter. I want to take the time to thank everybody that's decided to tune in tonight and tuned into this, the after show, or tuned in at the later viewing. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to hit like and share, and please do not hesitate to subscribe and share this podcast out. I try to shout this out as much as possible. Thank you so much for everybody again that has given me support, that has given me the support that I need to continue to do this podcast. I love doing podcasts like this, and eventually I want to do more podcasting in the future. But I definitely love talking about beer, and I definitely love talking about politics. Let's put it this way. Once again, thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. And the next time you see me, I will be 40 years old eventually. Anyway, thank you so much, and have a great weekend, everybody. This has been a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project. We hope you've enjoyed this tonight's podcast. Thank you and good night.